We are so excited to have you here for our very first ever podcast.
Yay! It took us a long time to get here, but we're here.
We are finally here and we are so excited.
Yes, we are. Welcome to Modern Sages Podcast.
I'm Jen Gilbreth.
And I'm Candace Coons.
With over 25 years combined, we have delivered messages from beyond,
explored ancient healing wisdom, and integrated these profound teachings into our everyday life.
We are passionate about creating new ways of being human in the modern age by integrating the wisdom of the past with the present and coming into remembrance of who we truly are.
Are you ready to change your relationship to life itself? If the answer is yes, your journey begins now.
Each episode, we are going to be sharing some of our favorite teas that we're drinking. So Candace, what are we drinking today?
So today we are drinking red raspberry tea leaf and spearmint tea leaf. And we got it in bulk and organic to make sure that it hasn't been sprayed with pesticides or chemicals or anything like that. And all natural tea bags. And this tea is so powerful. I wanted to start with this tea for our first show because I always recommend this to all of my clients as a way to bring the body back into balance. Red raspberry tea leaf is loaded with vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients. And it has not only amazing medicinal properties, but a lot of people don't know that it's actually equally as good for men and women, because a lot of women hear about it when we're pregnant because it's so wonderful to drink during pregnancy. But actually, it's wonderful for men as well because it helps balance their hormones. It's a very relaxing herb. It helps you relax, helps with constipation and many other things. And plus, it's just loaded with nutrients.
And it tastes amazing as well.
Yeah.
So we also added some local honey, which is also, the taste is amazing.
Yes.
And it also helps with seasonal allergies in your local area when you use local honey. So
yes,
a lot of benefits on top of tasting super amazing.
And what makes it taste even more amazing is the spearmint.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of people, they think of peppermint tea, but my dear friend who's a master herbalist recommended spearmint. She was like, you really should pair spearmint with any of your herbal teas that don't have very much flavor because spearmint tastes amazing and it's so good for you. And so I started pairing that with the red raspberry tea leaf because I didn't really like the flavor that much. And then I started adding it to all my other herbal teas, and spearmint is so much better than peppermint. It tastes better. I love it.
I know. I haven't ever had spearmint in it till today. And I don't think I'll ever go back. I would just have the red raspberry tea leaf. And so now I'm sold on the spearmint as well. So
yep. So You'll probably hear a lot about spearmint.
Yes.
With all the different herbal tea blends that we do.
Probably almost every.
It's going to be our go-to for flavor for sure.
Today, we're going to be talking about something that's very dear to both of our hearts. Is we want to talk about what it means to be human in the Aquarian age.
Yeah, this is a hot topic right now, especially after 2020, because everybody was talking about us moving into the Aquarian age. And there's been some astrologists that believe that it happened in 2012 because of the Mayan calendar and that and the Mayans speaking of the cosmology changes that are happening. But I feel that really the major shift happened in 2020. I almost felt like collectively that we were in the birth canal and in labor that whole year of coming into this Aquarian age.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the Aquarian age, so for those who don't know, is about every 2,160 years, give or take, there is a shift within where the world is in alignment with the zodiac signs. And so we just recently moved into, of course, the Aquarian age, and we just left the Pisces.
The age of Pisces.
The age of Pisces, yes. And so, even just knowing this, it does make a huge difference. It does affect us each and every single day without even us being aware of it. And so even just coming to more understanding of it has been so powerful, and how I cope through every single day. and like subconsciously understanding what the world is shifting into and how we can help bring that shift in a little bit easier.
And I love how this conversation is coming to the forefront because, even 10 years ago, people weren't talking about these new age concepts, these metaphysical concepts as much as they are today, which again is very reflective of the energy that is coming in now, because the age of Pisces was kind of a separated or divisive kind of energy, in the sense that our energies were very focused on 3D as opposed to 5D. So a lot of people, when they astrologers talk about, is that we are moving from a time of 3D consciousness into a 5D consciousness. And what does that mean? Well, when you're in a 3D consciousness, you are in your survival instincts. You are all about, survival. Things are separated. Things are dualistic. There is an hierarchy. There is faith or giving your power over to another, as opposed to going within yourself or being completely self-sustainable in every way.
Yeah. And going back to 2020, we all know how we all were pretty much forced to go within.
Mm-hmm.
Some enjoyed it and some didn't.
Yeah.
But I do see that shift, like you're saying, is almost like it was bringing us into this new space of really being within our inner center or our heart.
Exactly.
And I think that's one big thing is I love thinking about, like, now in the Aquarian age, it's all about, instead of relying on someone else's skills or someone else's wisdom, it's almost like it's time for us to find our own wisdom, our own inner self, what we actually think or what we actually feel versus what we've been taught. And it's a huge shift, and it's causing a lot of contention, it seems like, in the world, but it's also what we need to be able to really transition into having this Aquarian age really take full effect in a positive way where we can be affected positively from it.
Exactly. I know, like, for me personally, I can feel the higher shift of frequency coming in.
Yeah, me too.
With the Aquarian age, because of the way that we're placed within this cosmology, it affects our frequency. It affects the way that it affects our magnetic field. It affects the way that the frequency of our bodies. This affects our consciousness. And coming into 5D is really about coming into, like what you were saying, that heart space, that heart-centered consciousness. And some people call this Christ consciousness energy,
right? Because
it's unity consciousness, it's brotherhood, sisterhood. At the same time, it's interesting because even with that 5D, even though we're thinking about unity and connection and integration, there is a call for us to become centered in our own power, which is an individual journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even though we are all connected, it's this inner journey that you take with yourself, the journey from the head to the heart.
Which can be a long journey.
Which is a long journey. And it's not the way we were conditioned. It wasn't the way that we were raised. It's like you need to be logical. You need to pay the bills. You need to get this education. You need to go to church. You need to do this. You need X, Y, and Z. And everything was laid out, this is the way you do it, and that's it. And what we're being called to do is to come forth and become completely autonomous to our own truth, aligned with our own truth.
Yeah.
To reconnect into that inner wisdom that we all have within us. And that's a huge leap for a lot of people. And it was for me. And I'll go into that a little bit later, but what are your thoughts as far as like what I'm saying so far?
No, I totally agree. And I find that, working with people in a spiritual aspect, as we both do, it almost feels like you're kind of going back to when you're like, you feel the shift is I'm thinking like who I was even 6 months ago is not who I am now, and not even how I view the world. It's almost like things have really changed. And it's like, I can't even imagine feeling the way that I felt back then, because it's almost like it's not in my plane of existence now. And I see that showing up more and more as I work with people who are connecting to their loved ones who have passed on as a spirit medium. It's been interesting to see the uptake in the sessions, in how many times their loved ones want to offer guidance or suggestions. They never tell us what to do, or ways of really coming back to our heart center and really making decisions from the heart. And I think that's so beautiful, because even those on the other side want to deliver the message of like, no, it's time for you to claim your truth. Whatever you believe, and if you don't know what you believe, it's time to go within. And they never have judgment. They're never like, you need to do this or that. It's never black and white. It's like, well, what is right within your heart? And only you can make that decision. And I find that even, especially when it comes to spirituality or spiritual gifts, is a lot of people, their eyes are being opened to maybe a possibility of more going on collectively, of more going on universally, or in the galactic family. And I think being in a mindset of like, we're just here and this is all that exists, it's almost like we're really being forced to look outside of just this physical experience and know that there's so much more to life, to what we're experiencing, than what we're seeing. And I just see like this shift going on within all of us. And I love you going back to Christ consciousness, because in reality, Christ taught about loving ourselves, loving others, and loving God. And ultimately, in this new 5D viewpoint, it's really about loving ourselves, loving others, and loving God, or this higher consciousness, or this power within. But when we experience that, it's actually giving us permission to say, hey, there's more to life than what we're experiencing. And it almost gives us permission to experience it.
Yes, absolutely.
Which is so, so amazing and so eye-opening and so powerful if we give ourselves permission to love it.
And what is so cool is that when you reconnect back into your heart center, you come back into remembrance of who you really are, which is that divine that's within you. And it doesn't become like a concept in your mind. It becomes this embodiment, this knowing. You're like, oh my gosh, I was this all along.
Oh, I have like the full chills with that.
Yeah. And it brings us back into the remembrance that, we're multidimensional beings. We're not just running around in a meat suit, surviving day in and day out.
This meat suit.
There's so much more to us, and also that not only does it open you up to the reality that you are a multidimensional being, but also too, that you're not an island. You're not an energetic island. You are interwoven into a fabric of creation. And everything that you see or hear, or what you feel or you think, that energy has a ripple effect throughout creation. And that energy that goes out, you discover through this journey that the energy that you send out has to return. There is a cyclical kind of nature to energy.
It's like that ebb and flow.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, now I'm understanding the connection or the power of manifestation, because if I'm sending out a certain wavelength that manifests certain things, that energy has to come back to its creator one way or another. And that energy is going to come back to me and show up in my life. And that's at that point where you end up taking ultimate accountability, because you can't blame how your life is showing up for you when you are intrinsically involved in its manifestation on every level.
That's powerful.
So that is why I feel like this opportunity is bringing us, because that authenticity, that autonomy part of the Aquarian energy is because you're realizing, like, yes, I'm connected, and yes, I do manifest my reality. This is on me. And what is going on in my inner world, because whatever is happening on my inner world is going to have a direct effect of what's happening and showing up on my outer world. I think the biggest question is, what does that look like? As we shift frequency, as we come into alignment, as we come back into remembrance of who we are, and we begin to live a heart-centered life. I would love to just really dive deep into that, because with all of this metaphysical conversation and all the metaphysical conversations that are happening all over the world right now, yes, it is true. This is what we're feeling, and all this influx of energy and this wave of energy and all these shifts are happening. But a lot of people are confused and saying, okay, but what does that look like? What does that feel like to live a heart-centered life? And what happens when you're shifting into that kind of lifestyle?
Yeah, it's almost like, well, how do I do that? Or like, what's the next steps?
Mm-hmm.
Or how do I shift out of fear of living a heart-centered life? Fear is a big thing that holds all of us back as well.
Yes.
So I think that's good for us to explore as well.
And this is the thing. As multidimensional beings, we are spirit having a human experience. We are divine. We are eternal. We are already perfect, even if we just forgot. Right. But when we aren't aligned in that remembrance of who we are, and we're coming from a fear-based consciousness or fear-dominant life, it creates imbalances and blocks within our energetic bodies. Mm. And as you're shifting to a more heart-centered space or energy, there is a process of healing and detoxifying. It's just like if you were to do an herbal cleanse or an herbal detox, or on a physical level, you're going to feel awful for a period of time as you're clearing away the toxins from the body and you're releasing all this stuff from your body. Well, there is a similar experience energetically, emotionally, that we go through as we hold more and more of this frequency, and it opens up the chakras and it opens up our energetic system. Wouldn't you say? Yeah. That's part of the healing path that so many people are going through, trying to reconnect. It's like, as you reconnect, you're like, I'm doing the right things. I'm trying to get in the right direction, but I'm going through all this emotional release and heaviness and challenges. And
yeah,
it's because you are literally shifting frequency, and it's purging, or it's bringing those energies up to the surface.
Yeah.
To say, okay, well, what did you learn from this experience? Where are the diamonds?
Absolutely. And I think kind of going into that space is even going back to when we do step into living a heart-centered life, it almost does create this space of shifting that energy and being aware of it. But I think a great way to also go into that is with a childlike innocence.
Yes.
Is a sense of playfulness, is because we can do so much inner child work, inner healing. But what I found the most effective is when I give myself permission to explore what I loved when I was a child. Because I might have it's kind of like, okay, if you remember going to some park when you were little, and it was like the biggest park you've ever been to, and you couldn't even imagine going to any other park because it was so big. And then you go there as an adult and you're like, this park is so tiny. Why did I think this was so huge?
Yeah.
That's how it is with our life. Is sometimes we need to go back and to explore that, but almost give it a freshness of eyes in a playful way, so that we're not stuck in this heavy muck all of the time, where yes, sometimes it's great to be there, But I think also just as much as feeling those heavy things, if we add play and lightheartedness to that space, we're going to heal so much quicker because we're working at a higher frequency.
Totally. And a lot of times, our habits as humans is that we want to understand everything. And we want to know, like, why is this still bugging me? Why is this returning to my life? And we shift from a heart energy into a judgmental, ego-centered energy.
Yes.
And wisdom, you are the embodiment. We are the embodiment of wisdom. We don't have to go chase wisdom. To have that whole idea of like judgment is like, oh, I have to go get it. It's something outside of myself. And that is an illusion, because as you discover through time, that wisdom is you. That is you. That is your true identity. It actually comes to the surface naturally. You don't have to make it happen. And what I love what you said too, is that this innocence is so important, because if you can come to whatever you're feeling and be raw and fully feel what you're feeling, but approach it with curiosity instead of judgment. Like, what is this about?
Yeah. And
give your soul full permission to really feel into that energy without judging. Then what happens is that energy or that wisdom and that experience, you're able to retrieve those diamonds or those energies of wisdom that will just kind of come up to the surface naturally without you having to push or make it happen.
Yes.
And then also rediscovering this childlike awe and innocence within yourself, how to play again, because connecting in with that energy, you think about it when you were a child. You look at children who are toddlers, they scream, they'll have their tantrum, they go through their tantrum phases, but they're so present that they fully feel it. And within 10 minutes, they could be playing and laughing like nothing ever happened.
Yeah,
they allow that energy, and they're quick to forgive.
Yeah.
They just allow the energy to move through them without judgment. And they're able to learn from that experience quicker. That, if I do this or do that, it doesn't get me what I want. There's other ways to achieve my goals without throwing a fit or doing this or X, Y, and Z. But they fully feel that emotion, and then they're able to retrieve the diamonds from that experience and move on and get on with it. Be able to bring in that presence and that playfulness, because joy is the highest frequency in the universe. But a lot of people feel that joy should just happen, and I should just feel joyful and spiritual, and it should happen spontaneously. But what I have found in the heart-centered life is that happiness and joy had to be cultivated first in order to really clear out that space and open up that where it became more of a permanent state.
What does that feel like, or what does that look like, living in a more heart-centered life? And how can we make those steps to make it happen? Because going back to being in the Aquarian age, it's all about going into that heart center and living life that's true to you. And that can be an amazing concept to talk about. But how do we integrate that into our space so it's more of our everyday experience versus just a foreign concept?
Yes. And I think the first is that reconnection into our playful inner child. What things bring us joy, and making time for that in our busy lives, which is not easy to do, but at the same time, it is possible. And it's having playtime just for the sake of play without agenda. And this is what adults, they have such a habit of doing this, because they'll start playing and they'll say, I wonder if I could market this. I wonder, like for example,
that's so true.
I'm going to make jewelry. That was one of the first things I did when I reconnected with my creativity. It's like, I would love to make my own jewelry. Let's see if I can do it. And so I started making my own earrings and bracelets and necklaces and things like that. And then all of a sudden my energy started squeezing in, and my heart started closing up, because then I started thinking about, well, if it's not good enough to sell, could I make this marketable? And then I started putting a pressure on myself where it shifted the energy. Then it wasn't play anymore.
Yeah.
Then I started bringing in that perfectionism energy and judging myself and my work. And then what did I do? I stopped making jewelry.
Yeah.
Right? This is what so many people do. It doesn't matter if you're writing, if you're making jewelry, if you're taking a dance class, if you're whatever, right?
Yeah.
This is such a habit of people.
Yeah. It's almost like we put that pressure on it, or we put that like adulting into the space where if it's not going to serve someone, or if it's not going to make us money, then we can't do it.
We don't give ourselves permission almost at a certain point, right?
Yeah. When we give ourselves permission to play, it gives ourselves literally permission to actually experience the world.
Exactly.
To experience what life is about, because yes, having those worldly things of finances is definitely needful to live a good, comfortable life. But it's almost like we over-identify with the physical aspects of the world, that we almost separate ourselves from filling our spirit because we're so focused on the world. So it's like finding that balance, but even giving ourselves permission to play is a huge thing.
I know another one that I really, that helped me reconnect was that I tried and I loved it, was again, dancing or sacred movement. The reason I loved, and the difference between sacred dance or ecstatic movement and regular dance is that ecstatic dance or sacred movement is when you put on music and you dance like no one is looking, right? It's the crazy woman dance. It's where your full body, you're just feeling into it. And I remember I would never do this in front of anyone else in the beginning. Eventually I ended up teaching workshops on it. But in the beginning, I was like, I'm just going to dance. And so I would go in at night when the kids were asleep and Jeff was downstairs, and I dim the lights. I make sure I lock the door so nobody walk in.
Alone.
Yeah, make sure I was alone. Light my candle, create some sacred space energy, and then I would move. And then I realized in that movement that I was releasing not only blocks, but I felt like I was releasing. Tension, but I felt like I was releasing energy blocks, or I would end up crying.
Wow.
And I would end up going into these feelings of altered state of consciousness, like leaving my body or not feeling the edges of my body.
Interesting.
And I got it, just like how the Native Americans, did sacred ceremony around the fire. And this is something that is so rooted within our being to do. And yet we've conditioned it so much in our society that if it's not the salsa, or if it's not this or a ballet, and you don't do these moves, don't do it perfect, that is not real dancing.
Yeah.
And a lot of people judge themselves and they cut themselves off from the opportunity of really reconnecting into the present moment and releasing those energy blocks from their bodies and reconnecting with that inner child of heart energy.
That's so good.
Within themselves.
I just want to soak in all of that, because it brings in this place of, we are here to be spiritual and to be physical. Where I feel like it's easy to have a difference or a connection, diversion from both of those things. And so even experiencing that sacred movement, like really, I grew up dancing, so I can totally see the perfectionist side. And when I did that, I was like, I can't be perfect at this. I don't want to do it. So it almost like helps me want to retry that in a way of like grace and of love instead of like harshness.
Yes.
So that's something that I feel like I could definitely give myself permission to do.
Yeah.
And have fun with it. Another thing I think is really important is discovering some kind of creation, something that you can create from within, whether that's music or drawing or journaling or writing, or maybe it's creating like a model car or something that you can physically give your mental mind an outlet in creating. It almost gives you permission to connect to your spirit. And I like to describe this like when I'm channeling is we have the right side of our brain, which is the free flowing. It's the creative, it's the spiritual. And the left side is a lot more of the analytical. It questions things, it gets things done. So in life, we want to have a balance of both. But how many times do we live in more of that physical get things done, have a list of things versus having the flow of creation. And so it's almost like when we can give our left brain something to do, whether it's jewelry or whether it's a model car or it's painting or it's paint by number, it's like we're giving our left brain something to focus on so our spirit can actually make contact with our heart. So we can receive that answer. We can receive that guidance. And it might be like, hey, I'm trying this. And then in the middle of doing that, I'm like, I want to try this or this or this. And it's giving ourselves permission for our spirit to say, hey, connect back into your heart. What else do you want to try? Well, I want to try this. Okay, now what? I want to try this. And then what? This. And before you know it, you have like 5 things that you've tried. Maybe you didn't like some, maybe you like some, but you've given yourself permission to explore and to actually do what you came here to do, which is to experience life in your heart center.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love too how you mentioned you're not just here to be a physical, but you are to be spiritual. You're here to be both.
Both.
And this is going back to the point that in this Aquarian age, my feeling is that it's about that integration. It's not about saying like in the age of Pisces where I need to be either here or there, or I need to earn my way back, or I need to give my power outside of myself, or I'm going to heaven, or I'm going to hell, or there's like this thing where there is this disconnect in between the spiritual and the physical. And what I feel is that it's this part of this great awakening is, again, coming into the realization that you are multidimensional, that you are spiritual, having your spirit being, having a physical experience, and that there is nothing unholy about being human.
Oh, I love that.
There's nothing unholy about being human. To believe that would mean that something holy is outside of myself, that I'm somehow disconnected from the divine within me.
Yeah.
When the divine is moving through every molecule of your being.
It lives within you.
It lives within you. It's everywhere. It's on the chair that we're sitting on. It's the person we're speaking to. There's no separation of that which is holy and that which is human.
I love that. I just want to like hold that in my space. Is like, what did you say? Not being holy. Say that again.
There is nothing unholy about being human.
Just like sit with that for a minute. Like that is so powerful. And it's almost like the Aquarian age is also having us shed beliefs that don't serve us. Mm-hmm. And our body is bad. I have to have someone give me revelation for myself. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like we're really being called to turn within to find our truth. I'm like, how powerful is that? Like, and we have the answers within. Yes. We don't need to go somewhere else to receive it. However, we can look towards people as guidance, but
they're really there just to help you remember. Yes. That's it. Really, it's about remembrance.
Yes. Remembering who we are, remembering our true self, because once again, we're so much more than this physical journey. Mm-hmm. There's so much to us, so much to our life. And the Aquarian age really is like pushing us to explore that opportunity and to grow.
When you really feel into that energy, it's
exciting.
It's exciting because you're like, oh my gosh, miracles are real in ordinary existence.
And not only that is that if you are part of this, if this energy is in you, it's like ingrained within you. Like you are a miracle.
Every second.
You can provide and experience miracles that you get to create. Mm-hmm. As you're connected to your heart center. I always like to think that when I always talk about death, which that's what I do. But I always talk about how scientifically we're not pronounced dead until our heart has stopped beating. Mm. So essentially our heart is that connection from spirit to the physical. So when we are connected to our heart center, we're literally connected to our physical and our spiritual selves.
Mm-hmm.
There's no division. It's that connection that really makes being human possible and makes it worth it.
It was like, it reminds me of Gary Zukav's book, Seed of the Soul. Yeah, it was such a wonderful book. And that's what came to my mind when you said that, because it's like the heart. And then it's the last thing, you're not pronounced out until the heart stops beating. Well, it's that you were saying that connection between the soul and the physical existence. It is in essence the seat of the soul. Your heart is the seat of the soul. And even though you embodied this whole being and so much more, but it just reminded me of that. It's almost like you're sitting in the space of your heart and looking out from this perspective. And the other thing that came to my mind as you were talking is, again, everybody talked about the gratitude journals and how important gratitude is. And when we do energy work, we always start with a prayer before we do energy sessions, and we give thanks for the opportunity to be a channel of healing light for someone, to be able to be a witness of someone else's journey.
Absolutely.
We're grateful for all the support we have from the other side, from our angels, from our guides, from our creator. And what happens when you focus on that energy of gratitude is it opens up the heart chakra. And the more open your heart chakra is, the clearer channel you are
the more your
for life force energy, and the more your energy and more your gifts can shine. So, and the more aligned you are to source energy, the more you come into the remembrance of who you really are as well.
Yeah.
So it's all connected, this gratitude energy. And I think that, and like we were talking, going back to like, what does this look like? Besides being childlike and discovering your gifts and
gratitude.
playing with no agenda and moving with no agenda and being present in the moment, realizing there's nothing dirty or unholy about being human. And then focusing on gratitude again. Now, I remember when I first came on the spiritual journey, when I was so depressed. I had postpartum depression and I had Tourette's syndrome. And I remember that was the advice, because Oprah was all over TV and her show talking about her gratitude journal. And I was like, okay, I'm going to start practicing gratitude. When I first started practicing gratitude, I literally felt like I was faking it. I was, so numb at that point. So I would say, I'm so grateful for the color green. I would get so basic. But over time, I discovered through that process that it's almost like adding coin to a penny bank, it's like after a while, it started to add up
over time.
And then I started to notice that I'm like, oh, I can't just expect happiness to show up for me. I have to cultivate that. I have to work it like a muscle to help bring me back. And so I started doing it, and I started feeling more and doing it and feeling more and doing it and feeling more. And that opened up my heart more. And then I did heart clearing, and I cried and I journaled and I did my own healing journey, and I opened up some more. It was just kind of this process. I called it the unraveling. It felt like an unraveling, like I was a mummy asleep.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And then coming through my waking was like taking this fabric off, and a little bit more light would come out and a little bit more light, until eventually I recognized myself as a light being here. But the power of gratitude is not small.
Yeah, gratitude has transformed my life too. When I'm struggling, it's like, I'm going to say gratitude prayer and just bring that back into my being. And it's like literally strengthens your energy bubble or your aura. And it gives you more power to accomplish things. It gives your spirit more energy to live off of. Like there's so many different benefits of it that it sounds so simple, yet it's so profound.
Profound.
One thing I like to think too is like, if it's hard to integrate even just experiencing something or like because we're physical and spiritual. Sometimes we need a physical thing to bring in a spiritual element. I like to have a calendar on the wall where I can write 3 things I am grateful for today, or 3 miracles I saw today. But when I can give myself permission to see it over and over and over and over again, it almost helps reaffirm. It connects the physical and the spiritual to be one, and knowing that we're not separated. And so it's almost like a reminder. And it's like, oh, I can't have the same thing each day. It has to be something different. So you're really having to think about things differently.
Think about it and stretch. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and we were talking about going back to that concept that there's nothing unholy about being human and the power of gratitude. When you really allow that energy to really sink in, to really understand that, then you start recognizing the ordinary miracles, like Sarah McLachlan's song, Ordinary Miracles. I love that song. There are the simple things are miracles in themselves. You start recognizing how sacred life is.
Yeah. And
I think it's so important to talk about death. I think it's like, come on, let's talk about it, right? Because
absolutely,
we're all going to die. This life will be over before you know it. This life will be over.
Yeah.
Right? Like
so
this quick. Time frequency, everything is moving faster.
Yeah.
And there's nothing unholy about being human. Why do we resist the full human experience? Like even, coming into the world, we came here to experience what it's like to be human. Well, what is it like to be human? Well, you experience everything from ups and downs to everything in between, from joy to sadness to hate to love to you name it. Every kind of duality experience you can possibly imagine on the complete spectrum, plus the seasons of your life, being young and growing up and being an adult and being middle age and coming into the fall of your life and the winter of your life, if you live that full time here.
Yeah.
And it'll be over before you know it, and you're going home. And really, it's not even going, you are home. You realize that's what I feel will happen as you go, and you'll realize you never truly left.
Yeah. It's like, it was just a little portion.
Yeah.
Of forgetting. The quicker that we can remember who we are, the more power we have to fully play in this world.
Yes. To be fully present, to give it all you've got.
Yeah.
Right. And be truly happy and to cultivate, like the Joseph Campbell, being the hero of your own journey.
Yeah.
If you imagine, living a whole life awake in this human experience, in complete remembrance of who you are, the understanding of the temporariness of this adventure that you're on, of saying, I have a responsibility to live a life that makes me truly happy, a life of joy, something that every day I have an opportunity, this recognition, gratitude, again, going back to that gratitude, every day you have an opportunity. It's like a rebirth in a way where you have the opportunity to be a more authentic expression of who you really are in your relationships, your work, and everything. Like, what would that look like if you were truly being authentic? Well, you definitely would not be vengeful, hateful, closed off, stifled of your creative energy, making others wrong. Because when you're in remembrance, you understand that you're love, you're peace, you're connected, that everything that you send out must come back to you one way or another in this world. It has to come back one way or another.
So why not bring it back in the good way?
Why not? Right?
Yeah. I think that's so powerful. Just like death is a part of life. But when we know that there's more, when we know that we're, like you said, we've never gone, we have never left, it almost makes life worth living now. The peace and happiness that we can experience now, but it also can help us dare to dream and to live bigger and to do more and to experience what we came here to do. And I think that's the beauty of this whole purpose of this podcast, is exploring these ancient healing wisdom and integrating it has given both of us such a profound new relationship to life. Mm-hmm. And it's the daily little things that really make the biggest difference. And so I'm excited for us to move forward on this journey with this podcast, is really to break down more of those ancient wisdom to really help us come into remembrance of who we are, so that we can dare to dream, we can dare to live, but we can remember that we haven't left where we came from.
Exactly. I love that. And I love that you brought up that bringing in that ancient wisdom, this age of Aquarius of information. It's not about, Aquarian energy is not about saying, hey, this is wrong and this is wrong. Like this religion is better than this religion, or this belief is better than that, or this lifestyle is better than that lifestyle. And the way you love is better than the way I love, or I love better, all these comparisons. It's about taking in that information, saying what is authentic to my heart with the information that I'm receiving. That energy should bring you back into remembrance and service and compassion and joy. The way energy works in the world too is you get what you give.
Absolutely.
And, if we're authentically expressing who we are by integrating these wisdom teachings, because these wisdom teachings are like roadmaps.
Yes.
From our elders, from the wise ones who said, look, we've been human. And let me tell you something.
Let me give you a little bit of help on this human journey.
If you do that and this ends up happening, if you do this and this ends up happening. And
so you don't have to fall off that cliff. I'll tell you how to work around the cliff. Don't fall off the cliff.
Yeah. So why not gather?
Yeah.
Why not gather all the wisdom from the Bible, from the Quran, from the Bhagavad Gita, from the Tao Te Ching, from all of these sacred texts that are all over the world, and say, what did my elder say? And how can that information assist me on my journey back home to myself?
I love that. It's like reflecting on the past.
Wow.
That thunder.
Yeah.
Reflecting on the past to then help us create the present and rewrite the future.
Yeah. Like even turning our backs to those wisdom teachings. Like some people are they're so angry at organized religion. But when you do that, you are turning your back to a roadmap, to information that has been placed on your path here as a human to assist you on your human journey. Why would you not take it? Why would you not look at it? It's also like someone on the path saying, look, you're on a long, hard path. It's hot. It's rugged. It's going to be really challenging. Here's a bottle of water.
Yeah.
Why not take in that water? Allow it to be settled within your heart. Retrieve the wisdom.
Absolutely.
And then take it with you.
Yeah. And it's
like,
I remember when we were working together, I was going through my own spiritual discovery of what I believed when it came to religion, because I had experienced some heavy stuff. And I remember you kind of sharing it like that, like it's a path, there's water, you can take it, explore what you like. It's just like there to help revive you. And that gave me like a whole different perspective of like everyone in the world is doing what they know what to do. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it will work for people and sometimes it won't. But when we're bitter or we hold heavy, it's giving our power to that thing we're holding heavy more than just letting it go or finding a new way of viewing it. And the Aquarian Age seriously is all about really finding what's true to you and living that truth. So
being accountable, living that truth.
Yeah, it's not just like, oh, I'm going to learn it, and not, it's like, no, this is the time to live it.
Yes.
But it also, I love how you say, even with religions or cultures, it's like finding those balances, because ultimately it's all talking about the same thing, just in different words.
Mm-hmm. It really is.
And it's all these
core
wisdom
truths.
teachings. Yeah, it's these wisdom teachings to really help us to fulfill our journey here. And I think that's important to remember, that we don't have to hold heavy to one thing or close off
Yes.
completely because we've had a bad experience.
Because what does that do to your heart?
Closes your
It
heart.
closes it in.
Absolutely.
It closes in. And spirit is, or your creator, or the great spirit in shamanic terms, or Heavenly Father, Mother, your angels, your guides, those who are assisting you on the other side to your path of remembrance. They are going to provide information in many different ways. Right? So if you are at a particular place and you're hearing a talk, and you're at a church or you're at a function and there's an inspirational talk and someone is sharing their experiences with you, don't think that it's an accident that you're sitting in that space. Spirit knew you were going to be sitting in that space. There is something for you to hear that you need on your path. And so we need to be open to listening to the guidance that shows up in all of these different ways, whether it be different faiths, whether it be at different cultures, whether it be our animals that and birds and creatures that show up in our space. Like spirit is talking to us all of the time. And the more that we open up our hearts, the more we can receive that guidance, that support, that love. And so it's like, why don't close off? Like, listen with an open heart, like truly take in what resonates with you, even if it's just a tiny, tiny little thing. I would rather talk about what we have in common than to talk about and focus on how we are different.
Absolutely.
So why not have those conversations and focus on how you are the same, or how you can connect with your brothers and sisters of humanity? Absolutely. That is what we need to be focusing on in the Aquarian Age.
I also think that it's so important as we're opening ourselves up to how spirit speaks. This is it. I remember is the space of discernment.
Because it can discernment. My favorite word.
Because it can feel so fearful to say, well, maybe I do want to study this holy scripture or this holy text, but what if that counteracts what I've always learned? Or what if I study energy work or energy clearing and all of a sudden I'm pulled away from like who God is? But in truth, God is all of that. The Holy Spirit is all of that. And it's important for us to discern what feels right for us.
Yes.
And it goes back to honoring our journey, is like, we are here to discern what's right for us. And I feel like the Aquarian Age is not what's right and wrong. It's what's right for me and my heart center. It's not making one thing good or bad. It's standing in power for what is true to you. And it's okay to give yourself permission to explore them, because your spirit is never going to lead you astray. You will know if it's right or wrong. And if it doesn't feel good, if you're not connecting back into your heart space, that's when you could feel like you're being led astray. But when you're constantly taking a step back to really sit with it and feel it, you're never going to be led astray.
Absolutely.
You're always in your heart center, which is your connection to your higher self.
I totally agree. And for me personally, how I checked in with like what was right for me, and how I was able to discern or unravel all the information that was being presented. Because I went through a phase where I literally had 5-7 books next to my nightstand, on my nightstand next to my bed, because I just went through this thing. I could not get enough information. But how I discerned between what was aligned with truth, or my truth, or who I was that if the message was rooted in love, in unification, in compassion, in expansion, in joy or peace, then I knew that energy was truth for me. And that's how I was able to discern. If the energy I was reading or receiving did the opposite, where it was rooted in divisive energy or division, if it was rooted in fear, if it was not somehow trying to claim power or hierarchy over myself and my own truth and my own divinity in some way, where it created that separation. If I felt that it was so focused on pulling me away from that energy of like, keep checking into my own will, like check in with yourself. See if this resonates with you. You'll know, like, all spiritual teachings that are true spiritual teachings will ask you that question. Okay, now I've told you this. Now you check in.
You receive that revelation.
You receive that personal revelation for yourself. And if that resonates to be true for you, then welcome.
Absolutely.
Right? And that, I feel like, is the love, high frequency, 5D, Christ consciousness energy that we are exploring, and how you can discern all this information that is coming to you and have you navigate through that. It's like, well, what is rooted in love and unification? Mm-hmm. And what is rooted in fear and divisive energy?
Absolutely.
That for me was like huge for discernment.
And I feel that in my body. Mm-hmm. I feel light or I feel heavy. Yeah. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
But when we're kind of going through suffering or sorrow or heaviness, like when I was going through that faith crisis and you're like there to talk to me about it in my shamanic training, it was like, okay, I can be so offended that I'm so forward, or I can step back to my heart center and look at it objectively, almost like pull myself away from the situation to then see, oh, I get it. This is a beautiful path. And this structure is so beautiful. It brings happiness. It brings amazing structure. And there are things that don't serve me. And that's okay.
And that's okay too.
It's taking what does and leaving what doesn't.
Exactly.
Which is what the Aquarian Age brings.
Yes.
It's bringing this integration of what's been taught and what is working.
Yes.
And it's shifting.
It is shifting.
The whole consciousness, the whole feeling is like some things that have always been so concrete aren't working anymore. And people are finally daring to say it's not working because they're living in their heart center.
Yes. And you just mentioned, I feel like we need to bring up,
okay,
as we conclude our talk, how this feels. Okay. So again, we are multidimensional beings. And for centuries, we have been closing down our gifts of spirit in order to fit in society, or been told or shamed for what those gifts of spirit should look like or be like, or who should have them.
Absolutely.
Right. And as we open up our heart, those gifts of spirit, such as clairsentience and clairaudience and claircognizance and all of the gifts of spirit, are going to strengthen for everyone.
Absolutely.
And it's not because some people are gifted and some people aren't. This is something we all have, but just like a muscle, if you don't use it, you know, what happens to a muscle? It atrophies, right?
Yeah.
And so in order to strengthen that muscle, you have to work it out again. So I feel like this is something that we're going to be seeing collectively across the board with all humans at this time in the Aquarian Age, is the fact that people recognize, like, oh, I do have that muscle. I need to work it. But this is a way that I can stay connected and with my higher self, a way that I can understand my reality and navigate this world while still being human, right? At the same time, being the spirit being in the human experience. So that's going to change things up, because again, talk about authenticity. When you're with someone who has strong gifts of spirit, you can't hide. They can feel when you're not being authentic. They can feel when you're not telling the truth. They can feel your fear.
Absolutely.
So it's going to force everybody to step it up.
Yeah.
Right?
I love that. Yeah.
So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, that's what we're here to do. And so I love that, because this is just a little snippet of what we're going to be talking about and how to integrate into having this more meaningful relationship with others, with yourself, and with life.
Yes.
And really experiencing what it means to be human and not being ashamed about it.
Yes. There's nothing unholy about being human.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So good. Well, of course, I would love to invite you. We have an Instagram page, which we'll attach in the show notes, where we're going to be updating you and sharing quotes from today, as well as some activities and different things like that. So we would absolutely love for you to join us at Modern Sages on Instagram and as well as Facebook. But we'll also attach that to the show notes. So we just wanted to thank you so much for your time and for listening. And we just hope that this really hit home with you. And we can't wait to build upon this foundation of what it means to be human in the Aquarian age.
Yeah. Blessings, brothers and sisters.